special effects shot for Blender. In this tutorial, I'm going to probably do this in two tutorials because this is going to take a little bit of time. But in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how we can set up an effects shot where we're adding a CGI element to a live action sequence, and that's quite often what you may need to do in various special effects shots. So what I've got here for you is I have made a model of a Coke can, and I've got it sitting on a surface so that it's casting a shadow. Now you can see there's light and shadow forming on this this shape here. That is from this HDR background image, and I'll just turn off the background image to show you that. If I go into film here and turn off transparent, you can see this is a 360 degree image, and it's the light from the 360 degree image at the angles that is giving this can its reflections and stuff. Now that's not what the actual scene looks like, but it's a dull scene, and seeing as we are going to be making this transparent, it will be close enough. Now what we're going to be doing here is setting this up. Now you can see my camera here is not pointing towards this can, and the reason for that is that we are going to need to move this so that it's lined up with the background image. Now we're going to just set a sort of temporary image against the background of the camera. So with the camera selected, actually what I'll do is just turn on screencast keys for you. Okay, this should show up key presses and stuff like that, so keep an eye on the left corner here. So what we're going to do is line this camera up with this, but first we have to put the background images in. So having selected the camera, we're going to go to the little camera icon, which will now show up here. So you can see if I select this, that goes away. I select that, we get that. Now we need to tick background images, push the little arrow down. We're going to add an image, and instead of image, we'll change that to movie clip. And we're going to open the movie clip. Now you want the one that's will be in the same folder as this tutorial, and it's called Coke BG for Coke background, and 00120250. Alright, so this is the scene, and basically if I go back to frame 1 and play it through, I'm seeing here on the chairs relaxing, and the Coke can is going to be over here, and I'm reaching for it using telekinesis, and I am having it jump to my hands. So that's the effect shot. Now I need that to line up with this bit here. So there's a feature in this called, if we go into view, now just N will open up that, but also this little arrow here will open up this menu, and there's a series of tabs down here. We want the one called view, and then camera to view. Now what camera to view does is it allows us to move things around, and in this case we're going to move this in such a way as to get the angle approximately right there, so it looks like that Coke can is actually sitting on the table. Back out a bit. That's probably about right. Okay, once you've got it about right, you untick camera to view, because otherwise every time you move your mouse it will be there, and then we're just confirming that that is looking okay. Now, so Coke can looks about the right size, so just check that. It looks about right. We've got our shadow there, and so what we're doing now is we need to make this invisible, because at the moment we don't have the background in at all. But that was a clear glass table, not a, we don't want this big blank image being over there just so it can cast a shadow. Now shadows are very important because they ground a thing to the actual 3D shape, and even though when we put the clear one back in it's going to be subtle, it'll be there and it will look more realistic than just having the can sitting there. Will make it look like it's floating in the air. So we need to change this to be what's called a shadow catcher. Now this used to be a complex process, but in the later versions of Blender they've made this easier. So you can just go here to this little icon here, which just has the values for this particular shape, which is basically acting as a tabletop. We go to visibility. Now it might be closed, might have its little tab closed. Just open that up and you want to go shadow catcher. Now that makes that invisible, but there'll still be the shadow there. So we now have the can Sitting at the edge of the table. It's close enough. Yeah, I think that's good enough. Alright, so next step is to plan out our animation. So we've got to plan this out. Basically what we want to do is when do I start reacting? Around about 170. And I want the can to sort of jiggle around a bit, maybe slide a bit to the edge of the table, and then jump suddenly. Now I can see here with this that it's not quite perfectly set up, so I'm actually going to go back to camera to view and just get that. Yeah, that's better. All right, untick that again. Just make sure you got it pretty right. If you think the can looks too small, as I think it does now, just scale it a little bit and grab it. Make sure you lift it up a bit. All right. Okay. So at frame 170, we want to start wiggling and maybe sliding forward on the table a bit. And then by the time he grabs it at about 124, I think. Yeah, there we go. So that's when it's in the hand, because the hand's getting kicked back by the force of the can hitting it. So we want the can to be going really fast. So we'll probably have the can flinging towards the hand from about 118 to 124. So give that about 4 frames to jump across the screen. Will be about right. So really we're working between 170 and 124. So I'm going to grab down the bottom here of this corner. I'm just going to stretch that out, and that's just going to make it easier for me to work here. I'm just going to lift this up a tad. Alright, so that I can work on my timeline a little bit better here. Alright, now I do want it actually at frame 1, however, to be set where it is and not moving. So I'm going to press I, and I'm going to do location and rotation. Now what that does is set up a keyframe. So when I go now to frame 170, I press I again, location and rotation, and from here I'm going to press, and so what that does is set up a keyframe, so that can is going to stay where it is till there. If I just start jiggling the can, it will slowly jiggle the can between those 2 frames. So I have to have 2 keyframes set to the same position. Now this record button will record my animations, and the animations are going to have to be very, very close. They're going to have to be, they're basically going to have to be really, really every couple of frames. So I'm going to just rotate it, and if I press R twice, like R, toggle it, I can get a kind of free rotation. So I'm just going to jiggle it forwards a bit. And I might move it one more frame, and I'll go Control R. Let's just have a look at that. Alright, one more frame. Might jiggle it again. Alt R I'm doing to reset the rotation. I'll go on 2 frames. I'll just move it a bit sideways this time. Then Alt R back to that position. So that's giving me a nice little jiggle on there. So it looks like it's sort of straining a bit. And remember, I want this to jump at about 218, which is about here. So I'll move it again a bit, move it this way a bit, and 1 frame, Alt R, move it another couple too. Now this time I'm going to grab it and move it on the Y axis. So I've just pressed G for grab and Y, and I'm going to rotate it while I'm doing that. So it's going to go move forward a bit, and then I'm going to Alt R back, so it sort of jiggles back a bit. So it's just sort of slinking its way forward. Now I can use the move tool here, the rotate tool here. I'm using the shortcut keys, but know that you can use these over here as you're going. Go another couple forward. I'll wiggle it around a little bit more. And Alt R. So every now and then just have a look at your animation, just play it back and see if it's working okay. I'm going to do some more subtle movement there. Even just a tiny little movement will show up as visible. It may not seem like much when you actually animate it, but any tiny tinsy little movement. And look, this is going to look pretty rubbish. I'm not doing a great job here, but it will kind of give you the effect. I'm going to slide it forward a bit more now towards the edge. Alright, so I'm just going to keep doing this until I get to frame 218 and pause there while we're doing that. Okay, so I've moved up to 218, so I'll just play that animation through it at speed. So as you see, it's sort of gradually jumping forward. Alright, and then basically 224 is where it's going to be in the hand. So I'm jumping right ahead to 224. I'm just pressing grab, and I'm moving it there. Now that's the moment it strikes his hand. Now you'll notice the fingers are disappearing behind the hand, so this is going to be a problem obviously, but it's okay. This is what we expect to happen. Now I'm actually going to still angle this down a little bit further because I want it to sort of kick into the hand, and I'm assuming that as it's moving forwards it would yeah, sort of there be maybe the front of the can's going to be slightly higher, so I'm just arcing it over there like that. And now this bit's tricky because now I have to frame by frame have the can kick in as though it's being caught. So I need to move it a little bit each time, and I'm going to go X, move that down a bit so it's caught by the hand, and later on I'm going to have to mask out the hand. Alright, so we're here, so this is going to have to be frame by frame. Now this is going to be in the hand. And this is where it can end up looking a bit jiggery at the end. And there's really no easy avoiding this. I'm just going to have to put the rotate X, Y. So his hand slightly sideways there. So we have to make it look like the fingers are around the can. So I'm getting the illusion that the hand is in there. And I'm going to have to do this all the way to frame 250. So I'm just going to pause while I'm doing that. Alright, so I've finished animating out. You can see towards the end there particularly I've had to do every single keyframe. So let's look at the whole animation. Now it's slowed down there a bit as it's previewing it. It will actually improve as the thing. It's actually having to render this pretty realistically. It'll actually give you a quicker rendition in solid mode because it doesn't have to render all the cycles. So we got a little bit of shaking at the end, but that's the first tutorial. So that is setting up the scene, getting the shot, the animation shot set. Now the next bit that we're going to be doing involves actually setting this up so that we're going to be masking out the fingers. Now this is tricky because as you can see there's a lot of blur in here, and basically what's happening in the blur is you're getting two lots of shots. The shutter is slowed, so it makes the hand look thin and stuff like that. So we will add motion blur to the can before we animate. In fact, let's do that now. If I go here to my film here, there's motion blur here. Make sure that is selected if it's not already. If you put that on about 0.81, that will give you a fair bit of motion blur. So if I look at the scene here, you won't see it in here, but if I render this frame, you will see that the actual can is blurred in flight. And so it's only showing you the can at the moment in the scene. We haven't rendered the background. And if I show you back here before, while it's in motion, and render that, it should be actually quite blurred here, which it is. So that's how the motion blur works. So it will actually generate the blur on the fly as it goes. You can actually change the type of shutter. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to do. We can change the shutter curve, but you can try a few things in there. If you press F12, doesn't look much different to me, to be honest. Looks exactly the same. So anyway, we'll leave that where it is. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. Go to the next tutorial where we will mask out the hand. That's another arduous process, but this is what you do in special effects.